The biggest World Cup in history just kicked off across the United States, Canada and Mexico. 48 teams, 104 matches, 16 cities. And a question that thousands of fans have been asking, can I actually afford to go? Average resale tickets, $1,603. A seat at the final, up to $6,730. And that's before you've booked a flight. Because since the Iran war started in February, international airfares have climbed 42%. Jet fuel has nearly doubled, transcontinental fares have roughly doubled too. This is now the most expensive World Cup ever staged. It is also, according to a peer-reviewed study, the most polluting. And its main sponsor is the biggest oil company on Earth. A peer-reviewed study by Scientists for Global Responsibility, the Environmental Defense Fund, and the New Weather Institute have put the sustainability numbers on the table. This tournament will generate over 9 million tons of CO2 equivalent. That's nearly double the average of the last 4 World Cups. And 85% of that, roughly 7.7 million tons, comes from one thing: air travel. More than 4 times the air transport emissions of any previous tournament. The reason is structural. One analysis tracked a possible path for a qualifying team. Starting in Toronto to Los Angeles, 2,175 miles, Los Angeles to Seattle, 932 miles, then across to Boston for the knockouts, another 2,500 miles, and that's one team. Multiply that by 48 teams, plus staff, plus officials, media, and the 5 million fans FIFA expects. Qatar 2022 had many problems, but geography wasn't one of them. 8 stadiums within 55 kilometers of each other, metro and buses, no domestic flights needed. The 2026 tournament is the opposite. It's a competition designed from the ground up to put people on airplanes. Now here's where it gets difficult to take any of FIFA's green credentials seriously. The energy sponsor of this World Cup is Saudi Aramco, the largest oil company on Earth, responsible for over 4% of all historic global carbon emissions, 98.5% owned by the Saudi government. In 2024, FIFA didn't just sign Aramco as a sponsor, they created a brand new category, Major Worldwide Partner, specifically for them. The deal, reportedly worth $100 million a year, and covers the 2026 Men's World Cup, the 2027 Women's World Cup, and other FIFA competitions. And researchers estimate that the promotional effect of the Aramco sponsorship, the increased fossil fuel demand driven by advertising to 6 billion viewers, will induce roughly 30 million tons of CO2. That is more than 3 times the tournament's own operational emissions. Let me say that again. The advertising for the oil companies sponsoring the World Cup will likely produce more carbon than the World Cup itself. When we published our first video about this tournament, the Iran war hadn't started. On February the 28th, the US and Israel struck Iran. The Strait of Hormuz shut down, and the economics of attending this World Cup changed overnight. Before the war, jet fuel was selling at about $2.50 a gallon. By the end of March, it had surged 86% to $4.64. Cathay Pacific's CEO said fuel costs had doubled in a single month. Airlines across the world started imposing surcharges, cutting routes, and raising fares. The average international round-trip fare hit $1,097 in late April, up 42% from the same period a year earlier. Bookings from Europe to the US for July, the month of the World Cup final, dropped 14%. People are being priced out. The England Supporters Travel Club estimated that following England to the final could cost over $7,000 in tickets and basic expenses. That's before flights, before hotels, and before food. And this is where the cost story and the carbon story collide. The Iran war didn't create the problem, it revealed it. A tournament that requires millions of flights, sponsored by the world's biggest oil company, during a war caused by the world's addiction to oil. The contradiction was always there. The war just made it impossible to ignore. FIFA's response to all of this has been to launch something called the Green Card Initiative, a sustainability awareness campaign timed for the tournament. Environmental campaigners call it laughable. And honestly, it's hard to argue with them. The same organization running the most carbon-intensive tournament in football history, sponsored by the world's largest fossil fuel producer, is asking fans to think about sustainability. It's like a tobacco company sponsoring a lung cancer awareness campaign. FIFA signed the UN Sport for Climate Action Framework. It has pledged to cut emissions by 50% by 2030 and reach net zero by 2040. But it is simultaneously expanding tournaments, spreading them across continents, and signing huge deals with oil companies. In our previous video, we asked whether mega sporting events can be truly green. The answer increasingly seems clear. Not like this. Not when the format demands continental scale air travel, not when the business model depends on fossil fuel money, and not when every promise of carbon neutrality so far has been ruled misleading. The 2026 World Cup will deliver extraordinary football. It always does. 48 teams, 1 billion viewers, and moments that will be remembered for decades. What is in question is whether FIFA can keep claiming to care about the climate while running events that are getting bigger, dirtier, and more fossil fuel dependent with every cycle. 9 million tons of carbon, a huge oil sponsorship that will induce 3 times more, record ticket prices, record airfares driven by a war over oil, and a Green Card campaign to make you feel better about it. The World Cup kicked off on June the 11th. Let's enjoy the football, but don't buy the greenwash.